On today's Toy Spot, oh yeah, we're going to be looking at the Masters of the Universe Classics. We're going to be looking at the reissue of Skeletor. And before we actually look at this figure, yes, I finally, a little bit of a delay, but I finally started getting into the Masters of the Universe Classic figures. I'm not sure why I didn't do this sooner, because these are great looking figures. But before we actually look at Skeletor out of package, what we'll do is we'll look at the package itself. Most Masters of the Universe Classic figures, if not all of them, they do come with, if you can hear it in the background, they do come with a white mailer box. Most Masters of the Universe now tend to have the name across the actual box. The original Master of the Universe figures I don't believe had them, and this reissue of Skeletor didn't have it as well. But nice, because you can certainly display your figures, not display, but you can certainly protect your figures in the mailer box here when you're not actually having them on display. So I like that. I'll get that out of the way there. And we'll look at the package. Now I couldn't wait. I actually have already opened this up. I was too anxious to actually get in there and see what the figure looked like, and I gotta say it looked awesome. But what we'll do is see on the bottom there we've got the original, which is included now with the reissue figures. It says the original. It says Skeletor, Evil Lord of Destruction, and it's also intended for an adult collector. Very nice package too. It's got the wall, kind of the brickwork from the Castle Grayskull, and the three moons or so of Eternia. And we've got lightning down the sides here. I won't spend too much time because I'm sure lots of people have done reviews of Masters of the Universe Classics, and I'm late at the gate. Is that what they say? I'm last at the gate to start getting these guys. Actually, Skeletor is the very first one I've picked up. I completely missed out on He-Man. Boy. The read-up on Skeletor, actually the other figures in this wave first and foremost, we've got King Grayskull, we've got He-Man, Stratos, Skeletor, Beastman, and Merman. And growing up, I believe I only had these three figures, Skeletor, He-Man, and Stratos. I know I did have Stratos, and obviously these two figures as well. Never picked up a Merman, so maybe I'm going to get my chance now with the classic figures. At any rate, though, the read-up on Skeletor, the evil lord of destruction, says, real name Keldor, mortally wounded in a battle with his half-brother, Captain Randor, Keldor turned his dark arts master Hordak to save his life. Merging Keldor with an extra-dimensional being, Demo Man, from Despondos, Keldor was forever changed into Skeletor, overlord of evil. He gathered together many of Eternia's greatest outcasts and evil warriors in his quest to gain entry into Castle Grayskull and obtain what he believed to be the universe's ultimate power source. Awesome. And it says down there, collect them all. I'll rush through this quickly because there's probably not really much more to say in the way of packaging, but what we'll do is we'll get this guy out of the package and we'll get a better look at Skeletor. I'm so excited. I know I've already opened this guy, but I'm excited to get him back out and to show you guys how cool these Masters of the Universe Classic figures are. So stay tuned, guys. There is much more to come. And now, for any 80s kid, a staple for you growing up would have been G.I. Joe, would have been Transformers, and would have been He-Man. There would have been other lines there as well, the Thundercats and Mask, certainly those as well. But those were the three lines to pick up as a kid. And having collected all three of those lines, one of my favorites growing up, and certainly when I was early into my childhood, one of my favorites definitely was He-Man. And you're probably saying to yourself, Spot, if that was the case, why didn't you pick these up sooner? And the only answer I can give you is, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. But I remember, as a little side note to this review, I still remember, I believe it was my 7th or 8th birthday, I went to Chuck E. Cheese. And at Chuck E. Cheese, does anyone know Chuck E. Cheese? You have Chuck E. Cheese in the United States? But I remember Chuck E. Cheese had arcades, food, everything else. and my parents and grandparents got me the He-Man and Battle Cat 2-pack and the Skeletor and Panther 2-pack, and I was happier. I was happier than I don't know. I was happier than whatever happy could be at that moment. And having now picked up Skeletor here, as late into the game as I am, I can start appreciating my opinions of what He-Man was when I was 5 or 6 years old. Great looking figures. They've taken almost the exact same figure as the original He-Man toys, and they've tweaked it ever so slightly with articulation, all the while keeping the figures pretty much exactly the same as they looked back in the day. And this figure is gorgeous, and I so regret never picking up the He-Man. In the way of his accessories, he does come with several, and I'll just put Skeletor to the side there. He can scheme while I'm going through this. Skeletor does come with a power sword, the exact same recoloring, or same mold as the He-Man power sword, but of course purple, which carried over from the original Skeletor figure, which came with a power sword. Now, even though mine's a little warped here, I'll have to correct that. But what I do like is it's a double-sided sword. For anyone growing up and collecting Skeletor and He-Man figures, you know that what you got back in the day, you got one of these, where it was a half sword. And the idea is that Skeletor had the one, and He-Man had the other one in gray, and you could combine the two. Well, the only downside, though, is being that you didn't have two swords, whatever sword you gave He-Man or Skeletor, you only had a half sword, which you kind of felt chimped out. So I do love the fact that they gave you a double-sided sword, and he holds it very well. It's not loose or anything. A great-looking accessory. Probably the least interesting of the accessories. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what could get any better than this? First of all, we can slide his sword into his back holster there, and he can have his sword there. He also does come with his staff, and look how fantastic that staff is. That is awesome. Very tall too, so much so that it's not going to be completely in shot. But that looks gorgeous. Gorgeous. In the way of his articulation will be the standard articulation for all He-Man Masters of the Universe Classic figures, and that is that, if I just move the camera up here a bit, he has a ball-jointed head. Certainly not something you would have gotten in the original He-Man toys. He has a ball-jointed shoulder. You can swivel at the bicep, you can bend at the elbow, rotate the wrist. For those who actually follow the DC Universe Classic figures, you'll certainly know that these share very similar articulation points. You can bend at the torso, but just because of the armor that he's got on, it's not very easy. But you can rotate the waist, you can bend the leg back and forth, in and out, and you can bend at the knee, and you can bend at the foot. Unfortunately, my foot is a little loose on this side, not to the point that I'm worried it's going to fall over, but it is a bit loose. Now, this is a reissue. I'm trying to figure out what the difference between the standard Skeletor and the reissue Skeletor was. I know with He-Man, the loincloth was a little more flexible. It doesn't seem like this is very flexible. It's possible maybe it's just a re-release of the exact same mold. They probably haven't done anything different to it. Being that they all utilize the exact same mold, you can actually take the armor off. I won't do it just now, because I'm sure there's other reviews out there that do them. But you can just unpeg this. As you can see here, I'll do the one. You can unpeg it and take the whole armor off, and then he would just have his chest underneath. But a lovely looking figure. As manly as lovely it sounds, it's a great figure. I'm really disappointed that I never started picking these up sooner. The coloring is nice, certainly harks back to collecting the original He-Man toys, and I'm pleased as punch. Looking forward to really getting the rest of these guys, and I would give Skeletor here as high as an 8. And yes, he doesn't really have the detailing that some other figures have, certainly from like NECA Cult Classics or anything like that, But from an 80s kid growing up, and I was at that sweet spot of being an 80s kid, born 1978, so when I was 5 or 6, that's when all the big cartoons started coming out. So I'm pleased as punch having now picked up this guy. And I'm looking forward to getting many more of these figures down the road and hopefully reviewing them all for you guys. So in the meantime, a delightful figure. And that was a toy spot on the Masters of the Universe Classics. And this was the reissue of Skeletor. Definitely worth picking up. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more toy spots to come. And I'll see you guys next time.